Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm really glad you're here with us because today we actually have a mission.
We do, and it's a pretty big one.
Yeah, we are taking a hammer to the stereotype of creatine.
Finally.
Right. Because if you're like most people, when you hear the word creatine, your brain probably jumps straight to this mental image of a meathead bodybuilder.
Just chugging a shaker bottle in a locker room somewhere.
Exactly. Just trying to squeeze out like one more bicep curl. And look, it definitely helps with that.
Oh, for sure.
But if you think that's the only reason to care about it, you are really missing out on one of the most remarkable, well-researched molecules in human biology.
It really is a misunderstood compound.
It is. So today, we're going to reveal its surprising and honestly profound roles in mental health, in women's physiology, and even in how we age.
Yeah, I think it was mostly misunderstood because of how it was marketed back in the 90s.
Oh, definitely. All those shiny magazine ads.
Right. But to get to the bottom of this for you today, we are drawing on a really diverse stack of sources.
We've got a great stack.
We're looking at Peter Attia's recent newsletter, where he analyzes a brand new 2025 pilot study on depression.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
It really is. We also have a comprehensive review on women's health across the lifespan from journal Nutrients. Then we're digging into a preprint meta-analysis on age-related muscle loss, which is called sarcopenia.
Yep.
We've got a very practical dosing guide from Creatine Insider. And finally, a PubMed systematic review that looks at all those, those fancy, expensive alternative supplement forms on the market.
It's a massive stack of research, but there's this single underlying thread tying it all together.
Yes.
It's basically all about how our bodies manage energy at a microscopic level.
Fundamentally, creatine is all about bioenergetics.
Bioenergetics.
Right. Think of it as acting as both an energy buffer and an energy shuttle for the individual cells in your body.
Okay.
So when we look at creatine simply as a muscle builder, we completely miss the bigger picture of cellular energy homeostasis.
Because it's doing so much more.
Yeah. Exactly. To use an analogy, it's like looking at a massive fleet of delivery trucks and only caring about the handful of trucks delivering weights to a gym.
Right, right.
While completely ignoring the thousands of other trucks keeping the hospitals, the schools, and the power plants running.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the most energy-hungry organ in your entire body.
The brain.
The brain. There is a staggering statistic in that Peter Attia article we reviewed that really puts this into perspective.
Yeah, the numbers are wild.
Your brain makes up only about 2% of your total body weight, but it consumes 20% of your body's energy.
1%.
It's an absolute energy hog, demanding this constant supply just to keep the lights on.
And what's fascinating here is how that extreme energy demand connects directly to mental health.
Right.
And specifically to depression.
How so?
Well, for decades, traditional antidepressants like SSRIs and SNRIs have relied heavily on what we call the monoamine hypothesis.
Okay, the monoamine hypothesis.
The basic idea there is that depression is caused by a depletion of certain neurotransmitters.
Like serotonin.
Exactly. Serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. So the pharmaceutical drugs aim to boost the availability of those specific chemicals in the brain.
Makes sense.
But here's the catch. Producing those neurotransmitters and actually allowing them to function properly to drive neural responses that requires massive amounts of cellular energy.
So to use our previous analogy, if the brain's factory doesn't have electricity, it doesn't matter how many orders for serotonin are coming in.
Precisely.
The product simply isn't getting made or shipped.
That is a great way to look at it. If brain bioenergetics are disrupted, mood disorders can manifest regardless of what medication you introduce.
Wow.
And this bioenergetic deficit helps explain a very frustrating reality in psychiatry.
Treatment resistance.
Yes. About 30% of patients with major depressive disorder are treatment resistant.
30% is huge.
It is. Their brains simply might not have the energetic capacity to utilize the pharmacological therapies they're being prescribed.
I was reading the breakdown of the 2025 study in Peter Attia's newsletter, the one out of India by Sherpa and colleagues.
Right, the pilot study.
I found the premise brilliant. Instead of just giving patients another pill, they actually paired creatine with talk therapy.
They did.
Can you walk us through how they set that up?
Sure. It was a very cleverly designed, double-blind, randomized controlled trial. They took 100 participants who were dealing with clinical depression.
Yep.
And the researchers decided to combine 5 grams a day of creatine with cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Over an 8-week period, right?
Over 8 weeks, yes. The control group received the exact same CBT but with a placebo powder instead of creatine.
And the results were a 5.12-point drop on the PHQ-9 depression scale for the creatine group compared to the placebo.
Which is significant.
But for someone listening who has never taken a clinical depression assessment, what does a 5-point drop actually feel like in the real world?
Well, to put that in clinical terms, a 5-point drop is a highly noticeable shift in a patient's daily quality of life.
Like practically speaking.
Practically speaking, the creatine group moved, on average, from what is categorized as moderately severe depression down to mild depression.
That's a huge leap.
They went from struggling to get out of bed or manage basic tasks to being functional.
Wow.
And even more impressively, 12 people in the creatine group achieved full remission.
Meaning their scores dropped under a 5.
Exactly. They effectively no longer met the criteria for clinical depression.
And in the placebo groups?
Only 5 people achieved that level of remission.
That is a life-changing shift for those individuals. And that's just from adding a basic over-the-counter energy shuttle to their therapy sessions.
It is remarkable.
But I know we always want to look at the data critically.
Yes, and this raises an important question. What are the caveats?
Right.
Because we can't just declare this a miracle cure. It is a pilot study, so we have to acknowledge the limitations of the data.
What should we be looking out for?
First, there was a high dropout rate of about 40% across both groups.
Oh, wow, 40%.
Yeah, which is unfortunately common in depression studies, but it still muddies the waters.
Sure.
It's also a relatively small sample size. And crucially, they didn't directly compare this creatine and CBT combination to standard pharmacological treatments like SSRIs.
So we don't know the exact scale of the effect compared to standard medication?
Exactly. We need larger trials to confirm it.
That makes sense. But speaking of SSRIs, there was another detail from the Nutrients paper regarding adults taking antidepressants that absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, the response time data.
Yes. Anyone who has ever been prescribed an SSRI knows they famously take an agonizing 4 to 5 weeks to actually start working.
It's a very difficult waiting period.
You just have to sit there and wait for the neurochemistry to adapt. But the review noted that when you combine just 5 grams of creatine a day with antidepressants in adult females.
It accelerates the response time to just 2 weeks.
2 weeks. That's cutting the wait time in half.
It essentially provides the brain with the energetic raw materials it needs to adapt to the medication much faster.
That's amazing.
It's a powerful example of why the medical community is starting to view mental health through a metabolic lens just as much as a neurochemical one. The brain needs fuel to heal.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the way creatine works metabolically looks very different depending on whether you're male or female.
Very different.
And for the listeners who are women or who coach or train women, the physiological differences highlighted in that Nutrients review are wild.
They really are.
Females actually have 70 to 80% lower endogenous creatine stores than males.
Yes.
Just to clarify for the listener, endogenous just means the creatine your body produces naturally on its own, without food or supplements, right?
Correct. The female body naturally synthesizes significantly less of it.
Okay.
Women also generally consume less dietary creatine since it's primarily found in heavy meat consumption.
But here's the paradox. They make less and eat less, yet females have about 10% higher resting intramuscular creatine levels than men.
Yes.
How is that even possible?
It all comes down to the complex interplay of hormones.
Hormones. Always the hormones.
Always. Hormones, specifically estrogen and progesterone, directly dictate the activity of an enzyme called creatine kinase.
Okay.
Throughout the female menstrual cycle, as those hormone levels naturally rise and fall, the body's entire ability to store and utilize creatine shifts dramatically along with them.
Let's focus on the luteal phase for a second.
Mm-hmm.
This is the phase right after ovulation, leading up to menstruation, when estrogen is high.
Right.
I know a lot of women feel completely exhausted at the gym during this time. The paper mentions that during this high estrogen phase, protein catabolism actually increases.
Which is the breakdown of muscle tissue.
Right. And while that's increasing, the body's ability to store carbohydrates as energy drops.
So you have this perfect metabolic storm.
Yeah.
The female body is breaking down more of its own muscle for energy and simultaneously struggling to store the carbohydrates it usually relies on for quick fuel.
That sounds exhausting.
This is where supplementing with creatine during that specific high estrogen phase becomes a vital strategy.
Because it steps in as a backup.
Exactly. By providing an external energy buffer, it helps preserve that muscle protein and maintain cellular energy when the body's natural systems are running inefficiently due to the hormonal shift.
And if we look further down the lifespan, that metabolic demand only intensifies.
Definitely.
Think about the energy required to grow a human being. The gestation process is an unbelievable drain on the body's resources.
That's massive.
The nutrients review highlights that the placenta actually causes a severe reduction in the mother's creatine pool. The baby is essentially siphoning off the mother's cellular energy reserves to grow.
That's a good way to put it.
And a severe reduction in that maternal creatine is heavily linked to low birth weight and premature birth.
It makes perfect sense when you view pregnancy as an extreme metabolic event.
Oh, yeah.
And while large-scale human trials during pregnancy are still needed, and we always advise pregnant women to consult their doctors,
Of course.
the animal models exploring this are showing us something incredible.
What are they seeing?
In these controlled animal models, providing maternal creatine supplementation actually protects the newborn's brain from hypoxia during the birth process.
Hypoxia meaning a dangerous lack of oxygen during delivery.
Yes. Birth is a highly stressful event that often involves brief periods of oxygen deprivation for the infant.
Right.
The maternal creatine supplementation effectively crosses over and gives the fetal brain a much larger energy reserve.
Wow.
It acts as a cellular backup generator, allowing the newborn's brain tissue to survive the temporary lack of oxygen without sustaining damage.
That is just incredible.
It really is.
And that protective energy buffering effect continues to be deeply relevant later in life, too, particularly during menopause.
Absolutely.
Because when estrogen drops during menopause, it triggers a cascade of very frustrating physiological changes for women. A sudden loss of muscle mass, a decrease in bone density, and a significant drop in overall strength.
And creatine offers a highly effective countermeasure to that decline.
How much do they need to take to see that effect?
The studies in the review demonstrate that a high-dose creatine protocol, which is about 0.3 grams per kilogram of body weight per day.
Okay, so quite a bit higher than standard.
Yes. But when combined with a consistent resistance training program, it can significantly reduce the rate of bone mineral density loss in older women.
That's huge for preventing osteoporosis.
It is. It also actively improves muscle accretion, which simply means the physical building and accumulation of new muscle tissue.
Right.
It provides the energetic leverage the body needs to fight back against the metabolic decline triggered by the sudden loss of estrogen.
Now, that loss of muscle and bone density isn't just a menopausal issue, though.
No, not at all.
It connects directly to the broader aging process for everyone, because preserving muscle as we age isn't a cosmetic concern about looking good in a bathing suit.
Far from it.
It's a literal matter of survival and independence. Let's look at the preprint meta-analysis we have on sarcopenia.
A very important study.
For anyone unfamiliar with the term, sarcopenia is a progressive condition in older adults characterized by a dangerous, sometimes a rapid decline in muscle mass, strength, and physical function.
It's what makes an elderly person frail.
Exactly.
It is the primary driver behind falls, bone fractures, and the eventual loss of independent living.
So what did this meta-analysis find?
They looked at 14 different studies to see if combining creatine with resistance training could effectively tackle sarcopenia in the elderly. And the primary finding across the board was highly encouraging. The statistical evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't some margin of error fluke.
That's great to hear.
The combination of creatine and lifting weights definitively and measurably increased lean muscle mass in these older populations.
But there was a huge disconnect in this data, a real twist that caught my eye.
The strength metric.
Yes. Despite that measurable, undeniable increase in physical lean muscle mass, the meta-analysis showed absolutely no significant improvement in leg press strength.
Nope.
They physically built the muscle, but when they got on the gym machine, they couldn't push the sled any harder than the control group. How do we make sense of that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
this tells us something critical about how we interpret scientific studies.
Okay.
And more importantly, how we measure the aging process. Just because isolated mechanical strength on a leg press machine didn't improve, it absolutely doesn't mean the supplement failed.
Right, because the muscle was still there.
Exactly. What it actually highlights is a fundamental flaw in how researchers try to measure functional recovery in the elderly.
Because an 80-year-old doesn't need to max out a perfect 45-degree leg press.
No, they don't.
If they slip on an icy sidewalk, they aren't perfectly stabilized in a padded chair.
Exactly the point. Pushing a weighted sled inside a highly stabilized machine simply does not translate to the dynamic neuromuscular demands of real life.
That makes total sense.
Having more muscle mass on the body provides a metabolic sink for glucose, which helps prevent diabetes,
Right.
and it acts as physical armor for the bones.
Yeah.
But to truly measure the clinical impact of that gained muscle, we need better real-world tests in these studies. We need to measure dynamic balance, mobility, and sit-to-stand tests.
Functional movement.
Exactly. Can the person get out of a deep armchair without using their hands? Can they catch themselves and regain their balance if they trip on a rug?
That's what really matters.
That is where the newly gained muscle matters for longevity, not on a highly controlled gym apparatus.
So if you are listening to this and you're thoroughly convinced, you're thinking, okay, I need this for my brain energy, for my hormonal fluctuations, for my longevity, I'm going to buy some right now.
Good luck.
Right. You go online or walk into a supplement store, and you are immediately hit with a wall of confusion.
It's overwhelming.
The marketing is relentless, and there are dozens of different types.
It's an absolute minefield of proprietary blends and pseudoscience designed to empty your wallet.
And that PubMed systematic review looked at exactly this problem.
It did.
They analyzed 17 different trials, covering all these fancy, supposedly superior alternative forms of creatine. You see labels for magnesium creatine chelate, creatine citrate, creatine malate, ethyl ester, nitrate, pyruvate.
So many syllables.
They all sound incredibly advanced, and they all cost about 3 times as much as the basic stuff.
Let's bluntly cut through the marketing noise here.
Please.
Out of all those studies looking at these expensive, scientifically named alternative forms, only 3 of them actually bothered to compare their product directly to standard basic creatine monohydrate.
Only 3.
Only 3. And of those 3 that actually did the head-to-head comparison, none of them consistently outperformed basic monohydrate in any meaningful metric of athletic performance or body composition.
None of them.
None.
So the verdict from the literature is incredibly simple. Save your money, turn around, ignore the flashy labels, and stick to standard, inexpensive, heavily researched creatine monohydrate. But once you actually have that tub of basic monohydrate on your kitchen counter, the next question is how you're supposed to take it.
The great debate.
Yes. We pulled a 2026 dosing guide from Creatine Insider that breaks down this debate in the fitness world. Do you need to do a loading phase, or should you just do a maintenance phase?
This is a debate that has dominated fitness circles for decades.
As long as I can remember.
A loading phase traditionally means taking a very high dose, around 20 to 25 grams a day, usually split up into 4 or 5 servings for a period of 5 to 7 days.
That's a lot of powder.
It is. The physiological goal is to rapidly saturate the muscles with creatine as fast as possible. A maintenance phase, on the other hand, is just taking a small dose of 3 to 5 grams a day from the very beginning.
And the loading phase does technically work. It gets you to maximum muscle saturation in about 6 days.
True.
But there are some serious real-world downsides to swallowing that much powder that nobody talks about on the fitness blogs.
There are significant drawbacks. When you load that aggressively, it almost always brings an uncomfortable, rapid weight gain of 1 to 3 kilograms.
Which is mostly water, right?
Entirely water weight, because creatine pulls water into the cells as it saturates them. But much more problematically for the average person, ingesting 25 grams of creatine a day frequently causes severe gastrointestinal distress.
Oh, boy.
We're talking intense nausea, stomach cramps, and diarrhea.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and assume that most of us listening would prefer to skip the stomach cramps and the diarrhea if at all possible.
Highly recommended. The clinical reality is that simply taking a maintenance dose of 3-5 grams daily from day 1 achieves the exact same 20% increase in muscle saturation.
It just takes longer.
It takes about 4 weeks, 28 days instead of a single week to reach that maximum level.
So unless you are an elite athlete who just found out you're competing in the Olympics in exactly 14 days, and you desperately need to peak your energy systems immediately, there is zero reason to put your stomach through a loading phase.
Zero reason.
The slow and steady route is the way to go. Just mix 3 to 5 grams a day into your water or your coffee every day, indefinitely.
Consistency over time is the only actual requirement.
So what does this all mean?
Good question.
Let's do a quick recap to tie this massive stack of research together. We have seen that creatine isn't just a muscle volumizer. It's a fundamental driver of cellular energy.
Yes.
It provides the literal power your brain needs to synthesize neurotransmitters, offering a fascinating new pathway to support mental health and augment therapies like CBT and slow-acting antidepressants.
Beautifully summarized.
We've seen that female physiology, driven by the cyclical nature of estrogen and progesterone, makes creatine an incredibly valuable tool for preserving muscle and energy during the menstrual cycle, the massive drain of pregnancy, and the metabolic shifts of menopause.
Crucial for women across the lifespan.
And we learned that it helps build lean muscle in the elderly to fight the debilitating effects of sarcopenia. Even if rigid gym machines fail to capture the real-world functional benefits of that new tissue. And practically speaking, you don't need expensive, fancy supplement forms or painful loading phases. Just a few grams of basic monohydrate a day.
Simple as that.
It's not a powder exclusively for bodybuilders. It is a brain-boosting, hormone-supporting, age-defying energy shuttle.
It really shifts our entire perspective on what nutritional supplementation can achieve across a lifespan.
It really does.
And to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own, there was a profound, almost hidden detail buried in that nutrients paper.
Oh, what was that?
It noted that vegetarians naturally have much lower brain creatine concentrations than omnivores, and that dietary creatine intake across the general population is inversely proportional to depression risk, meaning the less creatine you consume, the higher your risk of depression.
Wow.
Now, think about human evolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors consumed incredibly high amounts of dietary creatine through hunting and eating wild game. Today, our modern diets have shifted drastically away from whole foods and animal proteins, moving toward highly processed, low-nutrient convenience foods.
That's a huge shift.
It begs a massive question. Could the current population-wide epidemic of mental fatigue, constant brain fog, and low mood partially be the result of a chronic, unrecognized dietary creatine deficiency?
Man, that is exactly the kind of question we love to leave you with.
It's something to think about.
It absolutely is. Keep questioning your assumptions about what you thought you knew, keep looking deeper into the science of your own biology, and keep exploring. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Deep Dive. We will catch you on the next one.